The wagon wheel cracked on the rutted road just outside Belmont, Nevada, and Hannah Turner knew with absolute certainty that her luck had finally run out completely. She pulled hard on the reins, bringing the horses to a halt as the damaged wheel groaned and tilted at an unnatural angle. Her 3-year-old daughter, Lucy, stirred in the wagon bed behind her, wrapped in a threadbare blanket against the October chill of 1878. Hannah's hands trembled as she climbed down to assess the damage, her worn boots sinking into the dusty earth. The wheel was beyond her ability to repair, the spoke completely shattered. She was still 2 miles from town, the sun already past its peak in the sky, and she had exactly $4.30 to her name. "Mama?" Lucy's small voice called out, uncertain and sleepy. "We are fine, sweetheart," Hannah lied, forcing brightness into her tone. "Just a little problem with the wheel. Stay wrapped up warm for me." She stood there in the middle of the desolate road, surrounded by scrubby sagebrush and distant mountains, fighting back the tears that threatened to spill. 3 months ago, she had buried her husband after a logging accident in California. 2 months ago, she had discovered that Thomas had gambled away nearly everything they owned. 1 month ago, she had sold what remained and started east, hoping to find work and a new beginning in one of the Nevada mining towns. But everywhere she went, the response was the same. "We cannot hire a woman with a child. Too much responsibility and distraction. No one wants to take on someone else's burden." The words had followed her from town to town like a curse. She had cleaned houses, taken in washing, done any honest work she could find. But it was never enough. The money ran out faster than she could earn it, and Lucy needed food, needed warmth, needed so much more than Hannah could provide. She had thought Belmont might be different. The silver mines were booming, she had heard. Surely there would be opportunities. But now, stranded on this empty road with a broken wagon and a sleeping child, Hannah felt the weight of her situation crushing down on her shoulders. She was 22 years old and utterly alone in the world. The sound of hoofbeats made her look up sharply. A single rider was approaching from the direction of town, mounted on a large chestnut horse. As he drew closer, Hannah's breath caught slightly. The man was enormous, broad-shouldered and powerfully built, with dark hair that fell past his collar beneath a weathered hat. He wore buckskins and a heavy coat, and there was something wild and untamed about him that marked him as someone who spent more time in the mountains than in civilization. He reined in his horse a few feet away, his eyes taking in the broken wagon, Hannah's worn dress, and the small shape of Lucy visible in the wagon bed. His face was weathered and tan, with a strong jaw covered in several days' worth of beard, and his eyes were a startling blue-gray that seemed to see right through her. "You need help," he said. It was not a question. His voice was deep and rough, like gravel rolling down a mountainside. Hannah straightened her spine, trying to summon what dignity she had left. "The wheel broke. I can manage." One dark eyebrow rose slightly as he looked at the shattered spoke, then back at her. "You planning to carry that wagon the rest of the way to town?" Heat flooded her cheeks. "I will figure something out." He dismounted in one smooth motion, and Hannah had to tilt her head back to meet his eyes. He had to be at least 6 feet 3 inches tall, with shoulders that seemed almost impossibly broad. His arms, visible where his sleeves were rolled up despite the autumn air, were corded with muscle that spoke of a life of hard physical labor. There was something both intimidating and oddly reassuring about his sheer physical presence. "Name is Marcus Reed," he said, moving past her to examine the wagon wheel more closely. "I have got a cabin about a mile from here. Got tools, got a spare wheel that might fit. You are welcome to it." "I cannot pay you," Hannah said quickly, her pride warring with her desperation. "I have very little money, and I need it for lodging when we reach town." Marcus straightened up and looked at her with those penetrating eyes. "Did I ask for payment?" "No, but I cannot accept charity. I have already been the recipient of too much pity." Something that might have been respect flickered across his rugged features. "This is not pity. This is being a decent human being. You have got a child with you, and it will be getting cold once the sun sets. I am offering you the use of a wagon wheel, nothing more." Lucy chose that moment to sit up, rubbing her eyes with small fists. "Mama, I am cold." Hannah's resolve crumbled. She turned to her daughter, smoothing back the blonde curls so like her own. "I know, little love. We will get you warm soon." Marcus walked back to his horse and returned with a heavy blanket. Without a word, He handed it up into the wagon. Wrap her in this for now. I will ride back to my place and bring the wheel. Should not take more than an hour. Why are you helping us? Hannah asked, unable to keep the suspicion from her voice. Too many men had offered help with strings attached, had looked at her with hunger in their eyes when they learned she was a widow. Marcus met her gaze steadily. Because you need it. Because I would hope someone would do the same for any woman and child stranded on a lonely road. That reason enough for you? Hannah swallowed hard and nodded. Yes, thank you, Mr. Reed. He swung back into his saddle with easy grace, his powerful thighs gripping the horse's sides. Marcus is fine. I will be back shortly. There's a canteen on the wagon tongue if your daughter is thirsty. He rode off before Hannah could respond, leaving her staring after him in confusion. She had met so few genuinely kind people in recent months that she hardly knew how to react to simple generosity. She retrieved the canteen and helped Lucy drink, then wrapped her more securely in Marcus's blanket. It smelled of pine smoke and leather and something else she could not quite identify, something wild and clean, like the mountains themselves. True to his word, Marcus returned within the hour. He had the wheel loaded on the back of his horse, along with tools that he unstrapped and laid out on the ground with practiced efficiency. Hannah watched as he jacked up the wagon, his muscles flexing and bunching beneath his shirt as he worked. He moved with the confidence of a man who had spent his life solving problems with his own two hands. How long have you been in Nevada? He asked as he worked, not looking up. 2 weeks. We came from California. Heading to Belmont? Yes, I heard there might be work there. He grunted, fitting the new wheel onto the axle. What kind of work? Anything. Washing, cooking, cleaning. I can sew reasonably well. I had hoped to find a position as a housekeeper, perhaps. You got family there? No, no family anywhere. The admission hurt, but there was no point in lying. My husband died 3 months ago. It has just been Lucy and me since then. Marcus glanced up at her, and she saw something in his eyes that looked like understanding rather than pity. That's hard. I'm sorry. Thank you. She hesitated, then asked, What do you do, Mr. Reed? Are you a prospector? Marcus, he corrected. And no, I'm a hunter and trapper. Spend most of my time in the mountains, come down to trade my furs and stock up on supplies every few months. That sounds lonely. His hands paused in their work for just a moment. It can be, but it is honest work, and I am good at it. He went back to tightening the bolts that held the wheel in place. I grew up in these mountains. My father was a trapper before me. This is the life I know. Do you have family? Not anymore. Mother died when I was young. Father passed 5 years ago. Had a brother, but he went east to try his luck in the cities. Have not heard from him in 3 years. Hannah heard the loneliness beneath his matter-of-fact words. Here was a man as alone in the world as she was, though he seemed more at peace with his solitude. She wondered what that would be like, to be content with isolation. She had always craved connection, family, the warmth of belonging. Marcus lowered the wagon and tested the wheel, rolling it back and forth to ensure it was secure. That should hold you. Take it easy on the rough patches of road, but you will make it to town fine. How can I repay you? Hannah asked, knowing even as she spoke that she had nothing to offer. He started gathering his tools. No need. There is every need. You have given me your time, your wheel, your labor. At least let me cook you a meal once I'm settled in Belmont. Marcus looked up at her, and for the first time, something like amusement softened his features. You planning on having a kitchen in Belmont? I am planning on finding work that will lead to having a kitchen, yes. He studied her for a long moment, and Hannah had the uncomfortable sensation that he was seeing past her brave words to the desperation beneath. Tell you what, he said finally, I come into town every 6 weeks or so. If you are still in Belmont next time I am there, and you have got that kitchen, you can cook me a meal. Sound fair? Very fair. Thank you, Marcus. He nodded and began strapping his tools back onto his horse. Lucy had been watching the entire exchange with wide eyes, and now she spoke up in her high, clear voice. Are you a giant? Marcus turned to look at the little girl, and Hannah saw surprise flicker across his face, followed by something that might have been tenderness. No, little one, just a big man. You are bigger than Papa was, Lucy said matter-of-factly. Papa was not as strong as you either. Hannah felt her cheeks burn. "Lucy, that's not polite." But Marcus was looking at the child with something approaching gentleness. "Your papa was strong in his own way, I'm sure. Different folks have different kinds of strength." Lucy considered this seriously, then nodded. "Mama is strong. She carries me when I am tired, and she never cries even when I know she is sad." Hannah blinked back the sudden sting of tears. "That's enough, sweetheart." Marcus mounted his horse, and from that height he looked even more imposing. But when he spoke, his voice was kind. "Your mama seems like a very strong woman indeed. You take care of her, little one." "I will," Lucy promised solemnly. Marcus touched the brim of his hat to Hannah. "Safe travels, Hannah Turner. I hope Belmont treats you well." He rode off before she could respond, and Hannah stood watching until he disappeared around a bend in the road. Then she climbed back onto the wagon seat, checked that Lucy was comfortable, and guided the horses forward. The new wheel rolled smoothly, and as the town of Belmont came into view in the distance, Hannah allowed herself the smallest flicker of hope. Perhaps her luck was finally beginning to turn. Belmont was larger than Hannah had expected. A bustling mining town sprawled across the rocky landscape with the Takama Mountains rising majestic in the background. The main street was lined with businesses: a general store, a bank, several saloons, a hotel, a restaurant, a blacksmith, and various other establishments that served the needs of miners and townspeople alike. The courthouse stood prominently at one end of town, its brick facade a testament to the prosperity the silver mines had brought. Hannah drove the wagon down the main street, very aware of the curious looks from passers-by. She stopped in front of the general store and helped Lucy down, smoothing her daughter's dress and her own as best she could. They both looked travel-worn and poor, but there was nothing to be done about it now. The store was well stocked, with barrels of flour and sugar, shelves lined with canned goods, tools, fabric, and everything else a mining town might need. A thin man with spectacles stood behind the counter, and a woman was examining fabric near the back. Hannah approached the counter with as much confidence as she could muster. "Good afternoon," she said. "I am new to town and looking for information about employment opportunities. Would you happen to know if anyone is hiring?" The man looked her up and down, his gaze lingering on Lucy, who stood pressed against her mother's skirts. "What kind of work are you looking for?" "Anything honest. Housekeeping, cooking, laundry, sewing. I'm a hard worker and I'm reliable." "You got a husband?" "I'm a widow." The man's expression turned sympathetic but not encouraging. "That is a hard situation, especially with a young one. Truth is, most folks around here are not looking to hire someone with a child in tow. Too much complication." It was the same response she had heard so many times before, but it still felt like a punch to the stomach. "Surely someone needs help. I am willing to work for reasonable wages." "You might try Mrs. Henderson at the boarding house. She sometimes needs help with the laundry and such. Or the restaurant might need someone in the kitchen, though I know they prefer workers who can be there at odd hours, which would be difficult with a little one." "Thank you. I will inquire." Hannah hesitated, then asked, "Do you know if the boarding house has any rooms available?" "Should do. It is at the end of the street, the big white building. Cannot miss it." Hannah thanked him again and left, fighting down the familiar feeling of despair. She found the boarding house easily enough, a large two-story structure that looked clean and well-maintained. The woman who answered the door was in her 50s, with iron gray hair and a no-nonsense expression. "I am looking for a room," Hannah said, "just for myself and my daughter. I'm also inquiring about possible employment. I understand you sometimes need help with laundry?" Mrs. Henderson looked Hannah over with shrewd eyes. "Room is $2 a week, paid in advance. Laundry help I pay 10 cents per load, and I'm very particular about how things are done." $2 a week would eat up her meager savings terrifyingly fast. Is there any possibility of reducing the rent in exchange for work? "You got references? Know anything about keeping a boarding house?" "No references from Nevada, but I am a hard worker. I kept my own household in California, and I took in washing there for several months." Mrs. Henderson crossed her arms. "I will be frank with you. I have had women with children stay here before, and it never works out well. Children are noisy, they disturb the other boarders, and mothers are always distracted. I need someone reliable." "My daughter is very well behaved," Hannah said, hating the pleading note that crept into her voice. "And I am reliable. I need this work, Mrs. Henderson. I need a chance to prove myself. The older woman sighed. I will give you a room for a week at the regular rate. If you prove yourself useful with the laundry, we can discuss an arrangement. But I make no promises, and if there are complaints about noise or disruption, you will need to find somewhere else. It was better than nothing. Hannah paid over 2 of her precious dollars and received a key to a small room on the second floor. It held a narrow bed, a washstand, and a single chair, but it was clean, and the window overlooked the street. Hannah sank down onto the bed and pulled Lucy close, fighting back tears of exhaustion and fear. Are we staying here, Mama? Lucy asked, looking around the sparse room. For now, sweetheart, for now. The next 2 weeks were among the hardest of Hannah's life. She took in laundry from Mrs. Henderson and spent long hours scrubbing, boiling, and ironing while trying to keep Lucy entertained and quiet. The work was backbreaking and the pay was minimal. She inquired at every business in town, but the responses were always the same. No one wanted to hire a woman with a child. She managed to pick up a few odd jobs, mending for the seamstress who was overwhelmed with orders, cleaning for a miner's wife who was recovering from illness, helping at the general store during a particularly busy week. But none of it was steady, and her savings continued to dwindle at an alarming rate. At night, lying in the narrow bed with Lucy curled against her side, Hannah stared at the ceiling and wondered how much longer she could keep going. She had nearly run through her money. In another week, 2 at most, she would not be able to pay for the room. And then what? She could not live on the street with a 3-year-old child. The nights were growing colder as autumn deepened. Already she could see snow on the peaks of the surrounding mountains. She found herself thinking often of Marcus Reed. There had been something solid and reassuring about him, something that made her feel safe in a way she had not felt in a very long time. She wondered if he was back in his mountain cabin, trapping and hunting, living his solitary life. She wondered if he ever thought about the woman and child he had helped on the road. It was foolish to dwell on him. He had shown her kindness, nothing more. And even if there had been something more, what did she have to offer a man like that? She was a destitute widow with a child, and nothing to her name but a few worn dresses and a stubborn refusal to give up. Still, she caught herself watching the street sometimes, looking for a tall figure on a chestnut horse. The 3rd week in Belmont, Hannah hit her lowest point. Mrs. Henderson informed her that she was bringing in a new washerwoman, someone with more experience and no children to mind. Hannah could stay on as a boarder if she could pay, but there would be no more laundry work. Hannah stood in the boarding house kitchen, feeling the world tilt beneath her feet. Please, Mrs. Henderson, I need this work. I will do better. I will work faster. It is not about working faster. It is about the reality of the situation. You cannot give the work your full attention with a child to watch. It is nothing personal. But it felt intensely personal. It felt like another door slamming in her face, another voice telling her she was not wanted, not valued, not worth the trouble. She took Lucy and walked out into the crisp autumn air, trying to think. She had perhaps $5 left, which meant she could pay for 1 more week of lodging if she was very careful with food. And then it was over. There would be nothing left. She was so lost in her desperate thoughts that she almost walked right past the restaurant. But something made her stop and look at the notice posted in the window. Help wanted, kitchen and serving staff. Heart pounding, Hannah pushed open the door. The restaurant was modest but clean, with a dozen tables and a savory smell coming from the back. A woman emerged from the kitchen, wiping her hands on her apron. She was perhaps 40, with dark hair streaked with gray and tired eyes. Can I help you? I saw your notice. I'm looking for work. I can cook and clean, and I'm willing to work hard. The woman's gaze dropped to Lucy. You got a child? Yes. Her name is Lucy. She's very well behaved. I need someone who can work long hours. Breakfast service starts at 6 in the morning. Dinner service runs until 8 at night. I need reliability. I can be reliable, Hannah said, knowing she sounded desperate. Please, I'm a good cook. I can provide references from California. I can do a trial period, anything you need. The woman studied her for a long moment. I am Emily Porter. I run this place with my husband, though he is laid up right now with a broken leg. That is why I need help. The work is hard, and the hours are long. I pay $15 a month plus meals while you are working. but I cannot have a child running around the restaurant while customers are here. I understand. I will make arrangements for her care during working hours. Even as she said it, Hannah had no idea how she would do that, but she would find a way. She had to. Emily Porter looked skeptical, but finally nodded. Be here tomorrow morning at 5:30. I will give you a week's trial. If it works out, the job is yours. If not, you get paid for the days you worked and we part ways. Fair? More than fair. Thank you, Mrs. Porter. You will not regret this. Hannah left the restaurant with the first genuine smile she had managed in weeks. $15 a month plus meals. It was not much, but it was something. It was a chance. She just had to figure out what to do with Lucy during working hours. The solution came from an unexpected source. That evening, Hannah was walking back to the boarding house when she encountered a young woman struggling with an armload of parcels. Without thinking, Hannah rushed to help, catching a falling box before it hit the ground. "Oh, thank you so much," the woman said, laughing. She was perhaps Hannah's age, with dark curly hair and warm brown eyes. "I always think I can carry more than I actually can." "Happy to help," Hannah said, steadying the other boxes. "I am Helen Morrison. I do not think we have met. Are you new to Belmont?" "Yes, about 3 weeks now. I am Hannah Turner, and this is my daughter Lucy." Helen smiled at Lucy. "What a pretty little girl. How old are you, Lucy?" 3, Lucy said, holding up 3 fingers. "A wonderful age." Helen shifted her packages. "Are you staying long in Belmont, Hannah?" "I hope so. I just found work at the restaurant." "Really? That is wonderful. Mrs. Porter is a good woman, though she works herself to the bone. Her husband's accident has been so hard on them." Helen paused, then seemed to make a decision. "Would you like to come for tea? I live just around the corner, and I would love the company. I'm fairly new to Belmont myself, only been here 6 months, and I am always eager to make friends." Hannah hesitated, but there was something genuine and kind about Helen's invitation. "That would be lovely, thank you." Helen's home was a small but cozy cottage with cheerful curtains and a well-tended garden. Over tea and cookies, the 2 women talked, and Hannah found herself relaxing in a way she had not in months. Helen was married to a man who worked at the courthouse, and she was originally from Ohio. She had no children of her own yet, though she hoped to someday. "It can be lonely here," Helen admitted. "Most of the women in town are so busy with their own families and work. It is nice to have someone to talk to." Hannah found herself telling Helen about her situation, Thomas's death, the discovery of his debts, her desperate search for work and stability. Helen listened with compassion, and when Hannah mentioned her worry about Lucy during working hours, Helen's face lit up. "I could watch her. I would love to have a child around during the day. My husband works long hours, and I have been looking for something to do, some way to feel useful. Lucy could stay with me while you work, and it would give me such pleasure to help." Hannah stared at her. "I could not ask you to do that. You barely know me. Then we will get to know each other better. Hannah, I can see you are struggling, and I am in a position to help. Please let me do this. I will not accept any payment. Consider it one friend helping another." Hannah felt tears spill over before she could stop them. "You have no idea what this means to me." Helen reached across the table and squeezed her hand. "We women have to look out for each other. That is what community is about." For the first time since Thomas had died, Hannah felt like she had found a friend, a true friend who saw her as more than a burden or a problem to be solved. She went to bed that night with Lucy curled against her side and hope flickering in her heart once more. The work at the restaurant was every bit as hard as Emily Porter had warned. Hannah was up before dawn, arriving in the dark kitchen to help prepare breakfast. She learned the rhythm of the work quickly, cooking eggs and bacon and flapjacks, brewing endless pots of coffee, serving miners and townspeople who came in for hearty meals before their long workdays. During the lull between breakfast and dinner, she cleaned, chopped vegetables, prepared ingredients for the evening service. Emily Porter was exacting but fair, and as the days passed, Hannah could see the older woman's grudging approval. Hannah worked with focus and determination, driven by the knowledge that this job was her lifeline. Lucy spent her days with Helen, and each evening when Hannah picked her up, Helen had nothing but cheerful reports of their activities, baking, reading stories, taking walks around town. "She is a delight," Helen told Hannah repeatedly. "Truly, you are doing me a favor by letting me spend time with her." 4 weeks passed. Hannah received her first month's wages and felt tears of relief when she counted the money. It was not much, but combined with the meals she ate at the restaurant, it meant she and Lucy would survive. She could pay Mrs. Henderson for the room, buy Lucy some warmer clothes for the approaching winter, even set aside a tiny bit for emergencies. She was walking back to the boarding house one evening in mid-November, Lucy's hand warm in hers, when she saw a familiar figure outside the general store. Marcus Reed stood beside his horse, loading supplies into saddlebags. He had not changed in the 6 weeks since she had seen him, still enormous and powerfully built, still radiating that sense of wildness and strength. Hannah's heart gave an unexpected lurch. She had thought about him more often than she cared to admit, wondering if she would ever see him again. Now here he was, and she found herself nervous in a way that had nothing to do with fear. "Mr. Reed," she called out, approaching him. "Marcus!" He turned, and she saw recognition dawn in those blue-gray eyes. Something that might have been pleasure crossed his rugged features. "Hannah Turner, you are still in Belmont." "I am. I found work at the restaurant. I'm the cook there." His gaze dropped to Lucy, and he crouched down to the little girl's level. "Hello again, little one. I'm glad to see you and your mama doing well." Lucy looked at him solemnly. "You helped us with the wagon. Mama says you are a good man." Marcus glanced up at Hannah, and she felt her cheeks warm. But he just nodded seriously to Lucy. "I try to be, and it looks like your mama has done very well for herself." "She works very hard," Lucy said. "She's the best mama in the whole world." "I believe that," Marcus said quietly, straightening back to his full, imposing height. They stood there for a moment, the sounds of the busy street around them, and Hannah felt something shift in the air between them. It was awareness, recognition, the sense that they were two lonely souls who had found an unexpected connection. "I promised you a meal if you were still in town," Hannah said, finding her courage. "Would you like to collect on that tomorrow? I have the evening off, and I have access to the restaurant kitchen. I could cook for you there, if you would like." Marcus studied her face, and she could not quite read his expression. "You do not owe me anything." "I know. But I would like to. If you would like to." He was quiet for a long moment, and Hannah held her breath. Finally, he nodded. "I would like that. What time?" 7 o'clock? The restaurant closes at 8, but Mrs. Porter said I could use the kitchen in the evening as long as I cleaned up afterward." 7 o'clock, Marcus agreed. "I will be there." Hannah spent the next day in a state of nervous anticipation. She told herself it was just a meal, just repaying a debt, but her heart knew better. There was something about Marcus Reed that drew her, something beyond gratitude. She found herself wanting to know him, to understand what lay beneath that rough exterior. She arranged for Lucy to spend the evening with Helen, who smiled knowingly when Hannah explained the situation. "A man?" Helen asked, her eyes twinkling. "Is he handsome?" "He is the one who helped us when our wagon broke down. He's just coming to collect on a meal I promised him." "Of course," Helen said, still smiling. "You look very pretty, by the way. That blue brings out your eyes." Hannah touched the dress self-consciously. It was her best, though it was still worn and patched in places. She had taken extra care with her hair, pinning it up in a way that she hoped looked neat and attractive. She told herself it did not matter what she looked like, that this was just a simple thank-you meal. But her racing heart told a different story. Marcus arrived exactly at 7, his long hair still damp as though he had bathed. He wore clean clothes, though they were still the buckskins and rough cotton of a mountain man. He filled the doorway of the restaurant with his sighs, and Hannah felt that strange flutter in her chest again. "Come in," she said, ushering him to a table near the kitchen. "I hope you are hungry." "Always," he said, and there was a hint of humor in his voice. Hannah had spent the afternoon preparing: roast chicken with herbs, mashed potatoes with gravy, fresh bread, green beans cooked with bacon. It was simple fare, but she had put care into every dish. She brought the plates out and sat across from him, suddenly nervous. "This looks good," Marcus said, and he sounded genuine. "Thank you for going to so much trouble." "It was no trouble. I like cooking." She watched as he took his first bite, saw his eyes close briefly in appreciation. "Is it all right?" "More than all right. This is the best meal I have had in months, in years maybe." They ate in comfortable silence for a while, and Hannah found herself relaxing. There was something calming about Marcus's presence, despite his intimidating size. He ate with obvious enjoyment, and she felt a warm glow of satisfaction at being able to provide this for him. "Tell me about your life in the mountains," she said finally. "What is it like, living alone like that?" Marcus set down his fork and considered the question. "Peaceful, mostly. Quiet. I've got a cabin about 8 miles from here, up in the high country. I trap in the winter, hunt year-round. It is hard work, but honest. And the mountains are beautiful, especially in winter when the snow covers everything and the world feels clean and new." "Do you never get lonely?" "Sometimes," he admitted. "More often lately than I used to. I think as I get older, I notice the silence more. Notice what is missing." "What is missing?" He looked at her directly, and the intensity in his eyes made her breath catch. Connection, someone to share things with, someone to come home to at the end of a hard day. Hannah knew exactly what he meant. "I feel that way too. Even here in town, surrounded by people, I feel lonely. Lucy fills so much of my heart, but there is still something missing. A partner. Someone who chooses to walk beside you. Your husband. Was he a good man?" Hannah thought about Thomas, about the love they had shared despite his flaws. He was. Not perfect, but he loved Lucy and me. His gambling was a weakness, one he struggled with, but he tried to be good. His death was sudden. One moment he was there, and then he was gone. I did not even get to say goodbye. "That is hard," Marcus said quietly. "My father went the same way. Heart gave out while he was checking his trap lines. I found him 2 days later. Sometimes I think the quick deaths are kinder, but they leave the living with so many unsaid things." They talked for hours, the conversation flowing easily despite their short acquaintance. Marcus told her about his childhood in the mountains, about learning to trap and hunt from his father, about the beauty and harshness of wilderness life. Hannah told him about her own childhood in a small town in California, about meeting Thomas at a church social when she was 18, about the joy of Lucy's birth and the struggle of the years since Thomas's death. It was past 10 when Emily Porter came downstairs to check on things and found them still talking. She raised her eyebrows at Hannah but said nothing, just nodded goodnight and went back upstairs to her rooms above the restaurant. Marcus stood reluctantly. "I should let you get home. Thank you for the meal. For the company, too." Hannah walked him to the door. The night air was cold and she shivered in her thin shawl. Marcus immediately shrugged out of his heavy coat and draped it around her shoulders. It swallowed her, enormous and warm, smelling of pine and leather and him. "I cannot take your coat," she protested. "You will freeze." "I am fine. The cold does not bother me much." He looked down at her, and in the lamplight spilling from the restaurant window, his face was shadowed and handsome. "Can I see you again, before I head back to the mountains?" Hannah's heart soared. "I would like that. Very much. Tomorrow? I could take you and Lucy on a picnic if the weather holds. There's a spot just outside town with a good view of the mountains." "That sounds wonderful. We would both love that." Marcus smiled, a real smile that transformed his rough features and made him look younger, almost boyish. "Good. I will come by at noon, if that suits you." "It suits me perfectly." He touched the brim of his hat and walked to his horse. Hannah stood in the doorway, wrapped in his coat, and watched him ride away into the darkness. She realized she was smiling, really smiling, for the first time in months. When she picked up Lucy from Helen's house, her friend took one look at her face and laughed. "Well, that must have been some thank you dinner." "It was nice," Hannah said, trying and failing to sound casual. "He is interested in you." "We barely know each other." "Sometimes that is how it starts. A spark, a connection." "You deserve happiness, Hannah. Do not be afraid of it." Hannah hugged her friend. "Thank you for everything." That night, lying in bed with Lucy breathing softly beside her, Hannah let herself imagine a different future. One where she was not alone, where she had a partner who chose her and Lucy both. It seemed too much to hope for, but for the first time, it did not seem impossible. The picnic the next day was perfect. Marcus arrived with a basket of food from the general store, cheese and crackers, dried fruit, fresh bread, even some candy for Lucy. They rode in his wagon out to a spot overlooking a valley with the mountains rising majestic all around them. Lucy was delighted by everything, the ride, the view, the treats Marcus had brought. She chattered away to him without shyness, and Hannah watched in amazement as this big, rough mountain man responded to her daughter with such gentle patience. He lifted Lucy onto his shoulders so she could see farther, and she shrieked with delight at being so high up. "You are good with her," Hannah said as they sat on a blanket while Lucy explored nearby, collecting interesting rocks. Marcus watched the little girl with a soft expression. "She is easy to be good with. She is bright and curious and kind. You have done well raising her." "It has not been easy. Sometimes I worry I'm not enough, that she needs more than I can give her. She needs love and security and someone who believes in her. Looks to me like she has all that." Hannah felt tears prick her eyes. "You always seem to know the right thing to say." "Not always. But I know what it is like to grow up without much. My mother died when I was 5. My father did his best, but raising 2 boys alone in the mountains was hard on him. He was not much for words or affection. I learned early on that love can look different than people expect. What matters is the trying, the showing up day after day. Is that what you want? A family?" Marcus turned to look at her, and the longing in his eyes was unmistakable. "I always have. But when you live like I do, alone in the mountains most of the year, it does not seem likely. Women want stability, a home in town, neighbors and community. I cannot offer that." "Some women might want something different," Hannah said quietly. "Some women might value strength and kindness and a man who knows how to survive in a hard world." Their eyes met and held. "Hannah," Marcus said, his voice rough, "I need to be honest with you. I find myself thinking about you, about Lucy too. I know we have only just met, but there is something here. Something I would like to explore if you are willing." Hannah's heart hammered in her chest. People in town say no one wants a woman with a child, that we are too much trouble, too much responsibility. Marcus reached out and took her hand, his large, calloused palm completely engulfing hers. "Then those people are fools. When I look at you and Lucy, I do not see trouble. I see a family ready-made for me. I see everything I've ever wanted." The words hit Hannah like a physical force. Tears spilled down her cheeks before she could stop them. "Do you mean that?" "I do not say things I do not mean." He brushed at her tears gently with his thumb. "I know this is fast. I know we have much to learn about each other. But I also know that chances like this do not come along often. I would be a fool to let you slip away." "I do not know if I am ready," Hannah admitted. "Thomas has not been gone that long. I worry about what people will say, about what is proper. I'm not asking you to marry me tomorrow. I'm asking if I can court you properly, get to know you better, let you get to know me. See if this feeling between us is real and lasting." Hannah looked at Lucy, who was showing her rock collection to an imaginary friend, her blonde curls shining in the sunlight. Then she looked back at Marcus, at this strong, kind man who seemed to see past all her struggles and failures to something worth valuing. "Yes," she said, "I would like that." Marcus smiled that transforming smile again. "Good. I'm heading back to the mountains tomorrow, but I will be back in a month, before the heavy snows come. Can I write to you?" "I would love that. But where will I send letters to you?" "I will leave word at the general store for any mail that comes for me. They will hold it until I come down from the mountains." They talked through the afternoon, making plans, sharing more stories, building the foundation of something that felt precious and fragile and full of promise. When Marcus drove them back to town as the sun set behind the mountains, Hannah felt like a different person than the desperate woman who had arrived in Belmont 6 weeks ago. Marcus left the next morning, but over the next month, Hannah found herself living for his letters. They arrived every week or so, brought down from the mountains by miners or other trappers who passed by Marcus's cabin. The letters were not flowery or poetic, but they were honest and warm, full of details about his daily life and questions about hers. He told her about a mother bear and her cubs he had watched from a distance, about a particularly successful hunt, about the way the first snow had blanketed the high country in pristine white. He asked about Lucy's favorite games, about Hannah's work at the restaurant, about her hopes and dreams for the future. Hannah wrote back eagerly, sharing stories about Lucy's antics, about the customers at the restaurant, about her growing friendship with Helen. She told him things she had never told anyone, Her fear of ending up alone and destitute, her guilt over being unable to provide better for Lucy, her secret longing for love and partnership. The letters created an intimacy that went deeper than their few face-to-face conversations. Through written words, they revealed their truest selves, and Hannah found herself falling for this man she barely knew, but somehow understood completely. When Marcus rode back into Belmont in early December, with snow dusting his shoulders and his chestnut horse breathing steam into the cold air, Hannah ran out of the restaurant to greet him. He dismounted and caught her in his arms, lifting her clean off her feet as though she weighed nothing at all. She laughed breathlessly, her hands gripping his broad shoulders, feeling the solid strength of him. "I missed you," he said, setting her down but not letting go. "I missed you too." Over the next 5 days, they spent every moment they could together. Marcus stayed at the boarding house, earning raised eyebrows from some of the other guests, but he was scrupulously proper, never alone with Hannah in a way that might damage her reputation. They took walks around town with Lucy between them, went on another picnic despite the cold, spent an evening at a town dance where Marcus proved surprisingly graceful for such a large man. Lucy adored him. She followed him everywhere, chattering constantly, begging for rides on his shoulders. Marcus indulged her with patient good humor, and Hannah's heart melted watching them together. On his last evening before returning to the mountains, Marcus asked to speak with Hannah privately. They sat in the boarding house parlor, the door open for propriety, and Marcus took her hands in his. "I know it has only been 2 months," he said, "but I am certain about my feelings. I love you, Hannah. I love Lucy, too. I want to marry you to give you both a home and a future. I know my life is not what you might have dreamed of. The cabin is small and isolated. Winters are hard. But I promise I will work every day to make you happy, to provide for you both, to be the man you and Lucy deserve." Hannah's heart felt like it might burst. "Are you sure? We come as a package. You cannot have one without the other." "I do not want one without the other. That is what I have been trying to tell you. I want a family, your family. I want to be a father to Lucy and a husband to you." His voice dropped lower, more intense. "I know people in town say no one wants a woman with a child, but I am not just willing to take you both on. I am grateful for it. You are everything I never knew I needed." Hannah threw her arms around his neck, laughing and crying at the same time. "Yes, yes, I will marry you." Marcus held her tight, his face buried in her hair. "I will make you happy. I swear it. You already do." They decided to wait until spring for the wedding. Marcus wanted time to expand his cabin, to make it more suitable for a family. He would add a second room for Lucy, improve the chimney, stock up on supplies. Meanwhile, Hannah would continue working and saving money, preparing for their new life. It was a hard winter. Marcus came down from the mountains only twice more before the heavy snows made travel too dangerous. But his letters continued to arrive regularly, and Hannah treasured each one. Lucy talked about Marcus constantly, calling him "our mountain man," and asking every day when he would come back. Hannah told Helen about the engagement, and her friend was overjoyed. "I knew it," Helen said, hugging her. "I knew from the first moment you mentioned him that this was something special." Emily Porter was more reserved but supportive. "He seems like a good man, steady, kind. Those are the qualities that matter in a marriage." Not everyone in town was supportive. Mrs. Henderson sniffed disapprovingly. "Moving up into the mountains to live like a hermit. That's no life for a child." The whispers followed Hannah. Too soon after her husband's death, marrying for security rather than love, foolish to trust a man she barely knew. But Hannah found she did not care what the gossip said. She knew her own heart, and she knew Marcus. The first time she had doubts was during a particularly brutal cold snap in January. The temperature dropped so low that water froze solid in buckets overnight. Hannah lay in bed with Lucy pressed against her for warmth and thought about Marcus alone in his mountain cabin. What if something happened to him? What if he was injured or sick, with no one to help? What if she was making a terrible mistake, taking Lucy away from the relative safety and community of town to live in isolation? But then a letter arrived, and her fears melted away. Marcus wrote about the beauty of the winter stars, about teaching her to trap and hunt so she would know how to provide for herself and Lucy if anything ever happened to him. He wrote about his dreams for their future, teaching Lucy to ride, taking family trips down to Belmont for supplies and socializing, building a good life together. Hannah wrote back, sharing her fears honestly. And Marcus's response was everything she needed to hear. He understood her concerns. He promised they would come down to town regularly, that Lucy would not grow up isolated and alone. He reminded her that he had been surviving mountain winters his entire life, that he knew how to stay safe. "Trust me," he wrote. "Trust us. We are building something real and lasting." And Hannah did trust him, more than she had ever trusted anyone. Spring came late to the mountains, but by early April, the snow had melted enough for travel. Marcus rode into Belmont on a warm day when the sun shone bright and the air smelled of new beginnings. He looked thinner after the hard winter, but his smile was as warm as ever when he saw Hannah and Lucy waiting for him. "The cabin is ready," he told Hannah. "I've got a room for Lucy with a bed I built myself. The shelves are stocked with food. The roof is tight and the chimney draws well. It is not fancy, but it is solid and comfortable." "When can we see it?" Lucy demanded, bouncing on her toes with excitement. "After your mama and I are married," Marcus said, looking at Hannah, "if she is still willing." "I am still willing," Hannah said, her voice thick with emotion. "More than willing." They were married a week later in a simple ceremony at the courthouse. Helen stood as witness, along with Emily Porter. Lucy stood between Hannah and Marcus, holding a small bouquet of wildflowers that Helen had helped her pick. When the justice of the peace pronounced them married, Marcus kissed Hannah gently, reverently, and then scooped Lucy up to include her in the embrace. "We are a family now," he said, "the three of us together." Lucy wrapped her small arms around both their necks. "I have got a papa again." Marcus's eyes were suspiciously bright. "That is right, little one. I am your papa now, and I will be for the rest of my life." They spent their wedding night at the boarding house, all three of them crammed into Hannah's small room. It was not romantic or traditional, but Hannah would not have changed it. This was their family now, and she wanted Lucy to know she was an essential part of it. The next morning, they loaded their meager belongings into Marcus's wagon and began the journey to their new home. The trip took most of the day, winding through foothills and then climbing higher into the mountains. The landscape was breathtaking. Towering pines, rushing streams swollen with snowmelt, meadows carpeted with wildflowers. Lucy exclaimed over everything, and Marcus patiently answered her endless questions. As they climbed higher, Hannah felt a flutter of nervousness. This was truly the middle of nowhere, miles from any other human being. But then Marcus reached over and took her hand, and the touch steadied her. The cabin appeared suddenly as they rounded a bend. A sturdy log structure nestled in a clearing, with smoke rising from the chimney and a small barn nearby. It was larger than Hannah had expected, and clearly well built. Marcus had added a porch across the front, and there were windows with real glass panes catching the afternoon sun. "It is beautiful," Hannah breathed. Marcus helped her down from the wagon, and Lucy tumbled out excitedly. "Can I see my room? Can I, Papa? Please?" "Go ahead," Marcus said, laughing. "Front door's unlocked." Lucy raced inside, and Hannah heard her delighted squeal echoing through the cabin. Marcus pulled Hannah close, his arms wrapped around her waist. "Welcome home," he said softly. Hannah looked up at this man who had chosen her and Lucy, who had seen not a burden but a blessing. "I love you," she said. "I do not think I have said that clearly enough. I love you, Marcus Reed." He kissed her then, deeply and thoroughly, and Hannah felt desire kindle low in her belly. They had not yet consummated their marriage, both of them agreeing to wait until they had privacy and time. Tonight would be that night. "I love you too," Marcus said against her lips. "More than I can say." They spent the rest of the day settling in. The cabin was indeed spacious, with the new room Marcus had built for Lucy, a large main room with a fireplace and cooking area, and a separate bedroom for Hannah and Marcus. He had made furniture himself, beds, chairs, a table, shelves. Everything was rough but solid, built to last. Lucy loved everything, especially the loft Marcus had built above her room where she could play. Hannah explored the cabin with wonder, touching the curtains Marcus had hung awkwardly, the dishes he had purchased in preparation for their arrival, the sturdy bed he had built for the two of them. That evening, after they'd eaten dinner and put Lucy to bed, Hannah and Marcus finally had time alone. Marcus built up the fire, while Hannah changed into the nightgown Helen had given her as a wedding gift. When she emerged from behind the privacy screen, Marcus was waiting, his shirt unlaced and his eyes dark with desire. "You are so beautiful," he said, his voice rough. "I have dreamed of this moment." Hannah went to him, suddenly nervous. It had been so long since she had been with a man, and Marcus was so large, so powerfully built. "I am nervous," she admitted. "So am I," he said, surprising her. "I want to make this good for you. I want everything to be right." He kissed her slowly, tenderly, his large hands gentle as they explored her body. Hannah felt herself relaxing, responding, desire building with each touch and kiss. When they finally came together, it was not the frantic coupling of her youth with Thomas, but something deeper and more intense. Marcus made love to her with reverence, taking his time, murmuring words of love and devotion against her skin. Afterward, lying wrapped in his arms before the fire, Hannah felt a completeness she had never experienced. This was what she had been searching for without knowing it, not just a husband, but a true partner, someone who chose her not despite her circumstances, but because of everything she was. "Are you happy?" Marcus asked, his fingers tracing patterns on her bare shoulder. "Happier than I ever thought possible," Hannah said honestly. Life in the mountains was hard work but deeply satisfying. Hannah learned to help with the trapping, to dress game and prepare hides. She discovered she enjoyed the physical labor, the sense of accomplishment that came from providing for her family. Marcus was an excellent teacher, patient and thorough, never making her feel foolish for not knowing things. Lucy thrived in their mountain home. She grew strong and healthy, her cheeks pink with fresh air and good food. Marcus taught her to ride, to identify animal tracks, to move quietly through the forest. Hannah sometimes watched them together with tears in her eyes, grateful that her daughter had this strong, kind man as a father. They were not completely isolated. Every few weeks, Marcus would take them down to Belmont for supplies and socializing. Lucy would spend time with Helen, who doted on her. Hannah would catch up on town news with Emily Porter. Marcus would trade his furs and stock up on necessities. Then they would return to their mountain sanctuary. Summer passed in a blur of hard work and simple pleasures. Marcus taught Hannah to fish in the cold mountain streams. They picked berries together, and Hannah made preserves for winter. At night, after Lucy was asleep, they would sit on the porch and watch the stars, talking about everything and nothing. In September, Hannah realized she was pregnant. She told Marcus one evening as they lay in bed, and the joy on his face made her heart sing. "A baby," he said wonderingly, his large hand settling gently on her still flat stomach. "Our baby. Are you happy?" Happy does not begin to cover it. He kissed her deeply. "Another child to love. Our family growing. Hannah, you have given me everything." "You have given me everything," she countered. "You saw past what everyone else saw as a problem and recognized it as the blessing it was." "I wanted a family ready-made for me," Marcus said. "And that is exactly what I got. Lucy has been a gift, not a burden, just like you." The pregnancy was relatively easy, though Hannah was often tired. Marcus insisted she rest more, taking over tasks she usually handled. Lucy was thrilled about becoming a big sister and spent hours talking to Hannah's growing belly, telling her future sibling about their life in the mountains. Winter came again, harsh and beautiful. They were snowed in for weeks at a time, but the cabin was warm and well-stocked. Hannah spent the long evenings teaching Lucy her letters and numbers, while Marcus worked on projects: a cradle for the baby, toys for Lucy, a new chair. The baby came in late March, just as the snow was beginning to melt. The labor was hard, and Hannah was frightened being so far from any doctor or midwife. But Marcus was steady and calm, helping her through each contraction, encouraging her when she thought she could not continue. "You can do this," he told her, his strong hands supporting her. "You are the strongest woman I know." Their son was born just before dawn, his first cries echoing through the cabin. Marcus cut the cord with shaking hands and placed the baby in Hannah's arms, tears streaming down his rugged face. "He is perfect," Marcus said. "You are perfect." They named him Matthew Reed, and he was a healthy, lusty baby with dark hair and his father's blue-gray eyes. Lucy was enchanted with her baby brother, helping Hannah care for him with surprising gentleness for a 4-year-old. Marcus was a devoted father, just as attentive to Matthew as he was to Lucy. He walked the floors with the baby when he was fussy, changed diapers without complaint, sang lullabies in his rough voice that somehow always soothed Matthew back to sleep. That summer was one of the happiest times of Hannah's life. She had everything she had ever wanted: a loving husband, healthy children, a home where she felt safe and valued. Sometimes she would stop in the middle of a task and just look around, marveling at how much her life had changed. One evening in July, as they sat on the porch watching the sunset with Matthew asleep in her arms and Lucy playing at their feet, Marcus pulled Hannah close. "Do you ever regret this?" he asked. "Giving up town life for this isolated existence?" Hannah thought about it seriously before answering. "Sometimes I miss having neighbors closer by, or the convenience of the general store. But I would not trade this life for anything. I have you, I have our children, I have a home filled with love. That is worth more than any convenience." "You have made me so happy," Marcus said. "When I met you on that road with your broken wagon, I never imagined we would end up here, a family, a real family." "People said no one would want a woman with a child," Hannah said, "but you wanted exactly that." "I wanted you," Marcus corrected. "Lucy was part of the package, and I thank God for that every day. But I wanted you, Hannah, your strength, your courage, your kind heart, everything you are." Hannah kissed him, pouring all her love and gratitude into the gesture. Lucy looked up from her play and wrinkled her nose. "You two are always kissing." "That is because we love each other," Marcus said, reaching down to scoop her up. "And we love you, and we love Matthew. We are a family, and families show love." "I know," Lucy said, settling against his broad chest contentedly. "I love our family too." The years passed in steady contentment. They had another child 2 years later, a daughter they named Rose, with Hannah's blonde hair and Marcus's strong features. Lucy grew into a capable young girl who could ride and trap nearly as well as her father. Matthew was a sturdy, cheerful boy who adored his big sister. Rose was sweet-tempered and affectionate, content to follow her older siblings everywhere. Marcus's trapping business prospered. His furs were known for their quality, and he got good prices for them in Belmont. They were never wealthy, but they were comfortable, able to provide everything the family needed with a little left over for small luxuries. Hannah's friendship with Helen remained strong. They exchanged letters regularly, and Hannah made sure to bring the children down to Belmont frequently enough that they knew how to socialize and had friends among the town children. Helen eventually had children of her own, and the two families became close, the children playing together whenever the Reeds came to town. Emily Porter remained a friend as well. When Matthew was 5, Hannah took on occasional work at the restaurant during the summer months when Marcus could watch the children. She enjoyed the change of pace, the interaction with people, the chance to use her cooking skills, and the extra money allowed them to save for the children's futures. As Lucy grew older, approaching her teenage years, Hannah sometimes worried about their isolated life. But Lucy seemed content, splitting her time between helping with the trapping and learning domestic skills from Hannah. She was a bright, confident girl who loved both the wilderness and the occasional trips to town. One evening, when Lucy was 12, she asked Hannah a question that had clearly been on her mind. "Mama, do you think my real father would have been proud of me?" Hannah set down her sewing and pulled Lucy close. "I know he would have been. Your father loved you very much, even though he did not get to watch you grow up." "I barely remember him," Lucy admitted. "Is that wrong?" "No, sweetheart. You were so young when he died. But you have 2 fathers who loved you. Thomas gave you life, and Marcus has given you everything else. You are allowed to love them both." "Papa Marcus is the only father I really know," Lucy said. "He has always been there for me. Is it okay if I think of him as my real father?" "More than okay. I think Marcus would be honored to hear you say that." Later that night, Hannah told Marcus about the conversation. He was quiet for a long moment, clearly moved. "She is my daughter in every way that matters," he said finally. "Blood does not make a family. Love does. Commitment does. Showing up every day does. You have been an amazing father to her, to all of them." "I have been blessed," Marcus said simply. "That day I found you on the road with your broken wagon was the luckiest day of my life. I got a family ready-made for me, and I have spent every day since trying to be worthy of that gift." Hannah nestled against his chest, listening to the steady beat of his heart. "You have been more than worthy. You have been everything we needed." When Lucy turned 13, a young man in Belmont started showing interest in her. Hannah noticed it during one of their trips to town, the way the boy watched Lucy, the shy smiles they exchanged. That night, back at the cabin, Marcus pulled Lucy aside for a serious talk. Hannah could not hear everything they said, but she caught the gist. Marcus explaining that Lucy was precious, that any young man who wanted to court her would have to prove himself worthy, that she should never settle for less than she deserved. Lucy listened seriously, then hugged her father tight. "I'm not ready for courting yet anyway," she said. "I'm still a kid." "Good," Marcus said, ruffling her hair. "Stay that way for a while longer." But time marched on regardless of anyone's wishes. Matthew grew tall and strong, already showing signs of inheriting his father's impressive build. Rose was a sunny, talkative child who brought joy wherever she went. Lucy matured into a beautiful, capable young woman who knew her own worth and refused to compromise it. When Lucy was 16, she met a young man named James, who worked as an apprentice at the Belmont blacksmith shop. He was respectful and hard-working, and most importantly, he treated Lucy with the respect and admiration she deserved. Marcus, ever protective, was skeptical at first, but after several supervised visits and long conversations, he gave his reluctant approval for James to court Lucy. "She is growing up," Hannah said one night after Lucy and James had spent an afternoon walking through Belmont under Helen's chaperoning eye. "Too fast," Marcus grumbled. "She was just a baby yesterday." "She was 3 when you met her, and she is 16 now. That is 13 years, not yesterday." "Still too fast." But Marcus smiled, despite his grumbling. "At least he seems like a decent young man. And she is sensible. We raised her right." "We did," Hannah agreed. "All 3 of them. They are good kids. Because they have a good mother. And a good father." They sat in comfortable silence, watching the fire. They had grown into partnership over the years, learning each other's rhythms and preferences, building a life that suited them both. Hannah sometimes could barely remember the desperate, frightened woman she had been when she arrived in Belmont. That person seemed like someone from another lifetime. "Do you ever think about how different things might have been?" Marcus asked suddenly. "If I had not come along that road that day? If I had just ridden past without stopping?" "Sometimes," Hannah admitted. "I do not know what I would have done. Probably ended up destitute, working in a saloon or something worse just to keep Lucy fed." "I am glad I stopped." "So am I, more than glad. You saved us, Marcus." "You saved me too," he said. "I was lonely up here in these mountains, even if I did not want to admit it. You and Lucy gave me purpose. You made me a better man." "You were always a good man. We just gave you a reason to show it." Marcus pulled her into his arms. They had long since moved past the passionate urgency of early love into something deeper and more sustaining. But the attraction was still there, the desire, the need for physical connection. Hannah melted against him, grateful for this man who had chosen her when everyone else had turned away. The years continued to pass. Lucy married James when she was 19, and they settled in Belmont, where James had taken over the blacksmith shop from his retiring master. Hannah cried at the wedding, overwhelmed by emotion as Marcus walked Lucy down the aisle. But they were happy tears. Lucy had found a good man who valued her, and she was starting her own life. Matthew, at 17, announced his intention to join Marcus in the trapping business full-time. He had always loved the mountains, and he had learned everything his father could teach him. Marcus was clearly pleased, though he insisted Matthew learn every aspect of the business before making a final commitment. Rose, now 13, was showing an aptitude for teaching. She loved working with the younger children when the family was in Belmont, helping them with their letters and numbers. Hannah encouraged this interest, knowing that Rose might need a skill to support herself someday. Hannah was 42 years old, and Marcus was 45. They had been married for 15 years, and Hannah could honestly say they had been the best years of her life. They had their disagreements, of course, and there were hard times, harsh winters, lean years when the trapping was poor, illnesses that frightened them until everyone recovered. But through it all, they had each other. One evening, as they celebrated their 15th anniversary quietly at the cabin with just the 2 of them, the children were all in Belmont for various reasons, Marcus gave Hannah a gift. It was a locket, delicately engraved with space inside for small pictures. "I do not have much to give you," Marcus said, "but I wanted you to have something that showed how much you mean to me." Hannah opened the locket and found Marcus had somehow managed to get small paintings made, one of Lucy, one of Matthew, and one of Rose. Her eyes filled with tears. "It is perfect, but you are wrong about one thing." "What is that?" "You have given me everything. A home, a family, love, security. You saw me when I was at my lowest point and told me I was not a burden. You looked at Lucy and me and said you wanted a family ready-made for you. Those words changed my life." Marcus took her hand, his thumb rubbing over her wedding ring. "I meant every word. Then and now. You are my family, Hannah. You and our children. You are my whole world." They made love that night with the tenderness of long practice and deep love, their bodies fitting together perfectly after so many years. Afterward, lying in Marcus's arms with the fire crackling and the mountain night peaceful around them, Hannah thought about the journey that had brought her here. She'd been told again and again that no one would want a woman with a child, that she was damaged goods, a burden, someone to be pitied but not loved. And then Marcus Reed had appeared on that dusty road and changed everything. He had not just accepted Lucy, he had embraced her, loved her as his own, given her his name and his protection and his devotion. He had made Hannah feel valued and desired and cherished. He had built them a home and a life, and he had done it all with strength and kindness and unwavering commitment. "What are you thinking about?" Marcus asked, his voice drowsy. "How lucky I am, how much I love you, how grateful I am that you stopped to help us that day." "Best decision I ever made," Marcus mumbled, already half asleep. Hannah smiled and closed her eyes, peaceful and content. She had everything she had ever wanted, and it had come from the most unexpected source. A mountain man who wanted a family ready-made, a man who proved that love was not about perfection or convenience, but about choice and commitment and showing up every single day. The years that followed brought more changes. Lucy had her first baby, a daughter, and Marcus wept when he held his granddaughter for the first time. Matthew married a sensible young woman from Belmont and continued working with Marcus in the trapping business. Rose eventually left for a teaching position in Austin, Nevada, though she visited home regularly. Hannah and Marcus grew older together, their hair graying, their bodies slowing down, but the love between them never diminished. If anything, it grew stronger with each passing year, deepened by shared experience and mutual respect, and the knowledge that they had built something lasting and true. On their 25th wedding anniversary, surrounded by children and grandchildren in their expanded cabin, Marcus stood to make a toast. His hair was almost completely gray now, and his face was lined with age and weather, but he was still imposing, still strong. 25 years ago, he said, his deep voice carrying through the room, I met a woman on a dusty road with a broken wagon and a little girl. Everyone had told her that no one wanted a woman with a child, but I looked at Hannah and Lucy and saw everything I had ever wanted. A family ready-made for me. Marrying Hannah was the smartest thing I ever did, and every day since has been a gift. Hannah stood and wrapped her arms around her husband, this man who had chosen her and Lucy all those years ago. You gave us everything, she said, her voice thick with emotion. You made us feel wanted and valued and loved. You proved that family is not about blood or convenience, but about choice and commitment. We love you, Marcus Reed. The room erupted in cheers and applause. Lucy was crying happy tears, holding her own daughter. Matthew stood with his arm around his wife, grinning proudly at his parents. Rose was laughing and wiping her eyes. And Hannah, looking around at the family they had built together, felt her heart overflow with gratitude. She had come to Nevada as a desperate widow, with nothing but a child and a broken wagon. She had been turned away again and again, told she was unwanted and burdensome. But Marcus Reed had seen past all of that. He had seen a woman worth loving, and a child worth raising, and a family worth building. And he had spent 25 years proving every single day that his choice had been the right one. That night, after everyone had gone to bed and the cabin was quiet, Marcus and Hannah sat on their porch as they had done countless times before. The mountains rose dark against the star-filled sky, and the air was crisp with autumn cold. Do you have any regrets? Hannah asked, knowing the answer but wanting to hear it anyway. Marcus pulled her close, his arms solid and warm around her shoulders. Not a single one. You? None. Not one. You made all my dreams come true. You made mine come true too. A family, a home, someone to love and be loved by. That is all I ever wanted." They sat in peaceful silence, two people who had found each other against all odds and built a life together through hard work and unwavering love. The mountain man who wanted a family ready-made, and the woman who had been told no one would want her. They had proven everyone wrong, and in doing so, had created something beautiful and lasting. Hannah thought back to that day on the road outside Belmont when her wagon wheel had broken and her future had seemed hopeless. If she could go back and tell that frightened, desperate version of herself what lay ahead, she would hardly believe it. A loving husband, a growing family, a home filled with laughter and joy, security and peace and the knowledge that she was valued and cherished. "Thank you," she whispered to Marcus, "for everything, for choosing us, for loving us, for building this life with me." Marcus kissed the top of her head. "Thank you for letting me. Thank you for seeing past my rough exterior to the man underneath. Thank you for giving me the family I always dreamed of." They stayed there on the porch until the night grew too cold, then went inside to their warm bed, their comfortable home, their life together. And as Hannah drifted off to sleep in Marcus's arms, she sent up a prayer of gratitude for broken wagon wheels and kind strangers and the unexpected paths that lead to home. Their story was not one of dramatic rescues or grand gestures, though Marcus had certainly rescued her in his own way. It was a story of quiet commitment, of showing up day after day, of choosing love even when it came with complications and responsibilities. It was a story of a mountain man who looked at a woman with a child and saw not a burden but a blessing. A family ready-made, just waiting for someone brave enough and kind enough to claim it. And Marcus Reed had been exactly that kind of man. The end.